We've got the review of the axial skeleton today. It's part 2 of 3 of the review from your skeletal packet. The skeletal physiology or the bone stuff review is first. This is second and appendicular is third. We're going through all of it, trying to get you the big ideas out of it. Again, the review worksheet focuses you on what's on the final. This stuff is just me going through the notes since it's been a while since you've had it. We'll start with the cranium. We worked top to bottom generally on this. Cranium protects the brain. Cranium is flat bones, fixed joints. There's not a ton of information about your specific features of the cranium. Basically, I went with foramen magnum is the big idea. It's where the spinal cord goes into the occipital. It's the big one. Know the bones of the cranium, though, and where you'd find them. Frontal is forehead. Occipital is the back of your head. Temporal is the sort of by your ear side. Parietal, the big bones on the side. I almost always say big bones with parietal. They make your sutures. And then underneath and kind of behind, you have your sphenoid, which is below your brain with your sella turcica, and your ethmoid, which I told you if you really go in there digging for gold, if you're picking your nose, you're pointing to your ethmoid. So those are your major bones. Those are your 8 bones of the cranium, because remember, temporal and parietal are paired. Scrolling down, there's some pictures in the packet you've got. Remember, the axial worksheets or the axial notes are posted. Everything should be posted. We've got the frontal bone. You do need to know where your sinuses are. You have sinuses, frontal bone, and your maxilla. Those I think are pretty easy to find because that's where it hurts when you're sick. Frontal, maxilla. You also have tiny little air sacs in your sphenoid and your ethmoid. They're not big enough for a big boy sinus. They're not big enough for a real sinus. But you have air sacs in there. Foramen magnum of the occipital translates as big hole, but it's not the biggest foramen in your body. The obturator foramen in your pelvis is the biggest foramen in the body, but it doesn't have the big hole name of where your spinal cord goes through. Temporal, styloid and mastoid processes, and don't forget, it's your ear hole. Your external acoustic meatus is on your temporal bone. For me, that helps me remember where the temporal bone is. If I think ear, temporal and parietal aren't as confusing. Oh, there's the sphenoid. I hate the sphenoid. Under the brain with the Turkish saddle. Good. Ethmoid holds your brain membranes. That also just sort of helps you put where it is. Sutures. Good. They're a fixed joint. Bone to the skull, 4 big ones in adults. Remember, the metopic suture is the one that goes away in babies. Babies have 300 bones. We have around 200. So there's a lot of fusion going on with the cartilage that's present when you're born and before you're born to give the 206 bones in the average adult human. Lots of stuff on the suture. No bregma, no lambda, but the bregma is the tippy top of your head, and the lambda is the back of your head. Bones of your facial region. Also fixed joints except for your jaw, which is a hinge. That makes sense. We just did muscle anatomy. The masseter and temporalis move the hinge of the jaw. So other bones, lacrimal, zygomatic is your cheekbone. That's a good one to know. The bones I ask about on the final are the ones that I think are important. I don't think the lacrimal is all that important, but the ones that make facial structure. Your nasal bones, your zygomatic, maxilla and mandible. Good to know. Your vomer is this thing. This bone thing here. This is cartilage. This is vomer. And I already told you how I feel about the inferior nasal concha. Don't even try it. Palatine's the back of the roof of the mouth, but maxilla is forward. And the hyoid. This is a great fact. The hyoid is the only bone in the body that does not articulate with any other. If you choose to do the packet on the respiratory system for the extra packets, you'll see where it comes up in terms of an anchor for the muscles of the tongue, because we talk about speech in that packet, and the function of the tongue in speech is related to the hyoid. You can see larynx in that picture, and that's for the hyoid picture, and that's one of the things you'll learn about if you do the respiratory packet. Skulls with labels, good. In terms of what I'm asking about bones, I'm going mostly with where they are rather than features, unless the features are epic. Foramen magnum, obturator foramen, that kind of stuff. Parts of the mandible, great, wonderful. It anchors your lower teeth. It's your lower jaw. That's much more important to me than the actual structure. The final's based on big idea. 60 to 100 heartbeats a minute. body temperature of 98.6. Femur is the biggest bone in the body. The auditory ossicles, the bones in your ears, are the smallest. That's what I'm looking for. Water is your most abundant chemical in the body. I'm not looking for, like, how big is... No, we're going big ideas. This is a good one. Seven cervical vertebrae. 12 thoracic, where your ribs meet. 5 lumbar. A sacrum and a coccyx. Good. Sacrum and coccyx are fused. The other 3 are freely mobile. Cervical are little. Thoracic are medium. Lumbar are big. That's good. And the little facts about each, fine, but that's probably the best. The ones I've got. Neck for cervical. No, though, the atlas and the axis, because those are important. Those are a different idea. The body of your vertebrae is good, and the fact that it protects the spinal cord. I'm not interested in arch and lamina and pedicle, but your spinous processes being these bumps is nice to know that these are spinous processes and the body's the thick part. And don't forget, intervertebral discs are cartilage pads found between the body. We talked about that early when we talked about the function of cartilage. So we come back to it here and look at the cartilage pads between discs. Facets or flat spots, good. Atlas and axis is important. Atlas holds up the world. It's the vertebra under your neck. Meets with the occipital. The axis, we rotate on the axis, has the dens or the odontoid process, the tooth thing. That's a feature you need to know. The dens or odontoid process. Usually I give both names because I only ever learned the dens. My last professor was really stuck on odontoid process. But with this, it allows your atlas to rotate. Atlas was the dude that held up the world. Axis we rotate on, and those names are given to C1 and C2, your top 2 vertebrae. So that's important. Those are good to know. Comparing vertebrae by region, to me, the most important things out of that are small, medium, large, and the thoracic vertebrae having spots for rib articulation, where ribs meet. I could ask bifid spinous process, and those are cervical. That's a legit question. Sacrum and coccyx, pelvis and tailbone, good. Coccyx is your tailbone. That's worth knowing. Ribs, 12 pairs total. 7 pairs of true ribs attached with cartilage straight across to the sternum. 3 more pairs of false ribs branch up to hook onto those. That's what I have that isn't quite attached on the one side. And then you have 2 other pairs of very small ribs called floating ribs. They're in the back. If you do the urinary packet, you're going to talk about how those protect the kidney at the top. Those floating ribs are considered by some people to be false ribs. So you would go 7 and 5, but say of the 5 false pairs of ribs, 2 are floating pairs. Or you can do 7 pairs of true, 3 pairs of false, and 2 pairs of floating. And that's the way I tend to say it for the 12 pairs. What's really important? 12 pairs of ribs, 12 thoracic vertebrae. These ribs attach to the sternum in the front, so your entire thoracic cage is your thoracic vertebrae, your ribs, and your sternum. You need all your parts to the cage. You need to make that complete circle. And if you look at the sternum, parts of the sternum, okay, cool, manubrium, body, xiphoid process. Your role of the sternum as a flat bone, as a protector, and as part of the thoracic cage is more important. Remember, your axial skeleton is head, neck, and torso, but we put clavicles, scapulae, and pelvis with appendicular, because they hold on your limbs, because they act as an anchor for your arms, your clavicles and scapulae, and for your legs, your pelvis. So we put those with appendicular. They are not technically axial. Even if you ask me where my clavicle is, it's on the axis of my body. It's on my chest. It's in line with my ribs. It is appendicular because it holds on a limb. That's my last big idea. When you go through your review, if you have any questions, let me know.